Yeah, that was April of 1988. Yeah, the outcome, thank goodness, is okay. But the detectives back when they were investigating me being shot, they said they thought it was just a gang initiation.
Planet Guitar has the great honor today to interview guitarist and composer Larry Carlton.
Hey,
Um,
Paul.
I wish I could, Larry, but I can't ignore what's just happened in your hometown, Nashville, Tennessee, where there's just been another terrible shooting. How are you?
I'm fine. I was out of town for the weekend when that happened, and I came home to that news. It's just terrible. My Lord, the world.
Yeah,
We're all very concerned about the global thing, you know.
yeah. Particularly because I was thinking that in 1988, you were very nearly killed in a shooting by a guy in a random gang attack. I guess it
Yeah.
must move you a lot.
Yeah, that was April of 1988. Yeah, the outcome, thank goodness, is okay. But the detectives back when they were investigating me being shot, they said they thought it was just a gang initiation. There were two kids. One kid had a gun, and the other kid just watched. And they shot Joe Citizen, and then they ran off so that they could go back and report to the gang that yes, he shot somebody today.
As you say, it's an extraordinary world we live in.
Yeah.
Turning to happier things, I
Mhm.
recall the big impact that your playing on the Crusaders, those Southern Nights, had on me as a teenager.
Wow.
Um, and it's nearly the 50th anniversary of that
Yeah.
album.
Yeah.
Um, how do you recall it now, the album?
Wow. I have more of a general sense of my 13 albums with the Crusaders, in the 70s.
Okay.
Uh, I believe, and you tell me, Paul, if I'm right, but I believe on that album was that uh, the song that Joe Sample wrote about Joe Louis,
Uh,
ballad, ballad for Joe, I think.
okay.
Anyway, that's a standout tune for me just because of Joe's composition.
Right.
But I haven't listened to that album in many, many years, so I really don't remember individual songs.
Yes. Yeah. I listened to it the other day. It was just wonderful.
Yeah, cool.
You said it helped you be a more mature musician, playing with these guys. You were 23 years old and you were in another world. Is that right?
Well, yeah, sure. I started playing, as you know, I'm sure, when I was 6 years old. But so I had a lot of experience because I had been playing my whole life. But Joe, Wilton, and Styx were all 9 years older than me. And they came from Houston, Texas. I was from Los Angeles. So their input musically and environmentally was completely different than mine, even though I loved jazz as a teenager. So to be with those gentlemen on a consistent year after year basis, of course it influenced me. I did a show this weekend, excuse me, and when I broke down one of the songs to where I got the band very quiet so I could just kind of preach on my guitar, and some after the show was over, some guys came up and said, "Man, that was so cool when you did that." And I said, "I learned that from Joe Sample. He used to break that band down when we'd play live and become very intimate." So yeah, huge influence.
You mentioned your childhood, and I'd love to go back and ask a few questions about that. I understand that you originally inspired to become to play guitar by watching country music on TV.
Yeah, sure. In Los Angeles, there was a television show called the Town Hall Party,
Uh-huh.
and one other show was called the Hometown Jamboree. And yeah, that music was available every Saturday night, and I was taking guitar lessons. So it looked pretty cool to me as a kid. It was Joe Maphis, Larry Collins was a
Uh-huh.
very famous. He was like 12 years old or something.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, to see that and then go take my lessons, and then rock and roll was just becoming very, very popular around 1958 when I was 10.
Uh-huh.
So all of that as a kid just perked my ears and kept me interested.
Do you remember which your first guitar was?
It was an acoustic guitar that was at my grandmother's house. It
Uh-huh.
had no name on it.
Okay.
And my mother played acoustic guitar when she was a teenager, and her dad played the fiddle. They're from southeastern Oklahoma.
Mm.
So mom could play three chords. I'm sure that kind of helped me when I started because she could help show me at
Mm.
home for my lessons. But yeah, that first guitar had no name on it. The action was about this high off the neck, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, but we got through it.
Uh-huh.
And about 6 or 7 months after I started taking lessons on that acoustic, the teacher said, he can be good, but he needs a better instrument.
Okay.
And so my parents bought me a broadcaster, Fender Broadcaster.
Uh-huh.
That was my first electric guitar.
And do you still have it?
No, I wish I had all those guitars like most musicians. I didn't. We would trade up,
Sure.
trade the broadcaster to get the Strat in a few years, that whole thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, then you were at 18, you were asked by your drummer and producer of a surf band, The Challengers, to join him in the studio, I understand. And there
Mhm.
you met Hal Blaine and other members of Wrecking Crew. I guess you must have been a little nervous to be with them.
A little bit, of course. I think I was driving at the time, so I was at least 16,
Yes.
maybe 17, but probably 16.
Okay.
But I know when I reflected after that, years later, um, the producer, Richard Delvey, the drummer of the Challengers, uh, he knew I could read music very well.
Yes.
And it was an album of instrumental cover tunes. So, but I still sounded young enough, I think, uh, to sound like I was in a surf band playing Tequila and other songs like that.
Uh-huh.
So it worked out fine. I don't remember how many years ago now that I actually got to hear one of the tunes, found it on YouTube or something, and I sound young.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I understand it was exciting because you had this rock background, a jazz background, and well, it was starting to sort of get into the fusion mix. And is that why you were so much in demand at that time, do you think?
Probably. Um, yeah, I would say because of the rock and roll influence, me being 10 years old and hearing Chuck Berry and all the doo-wop songs on the radio, they were all the same. So once you learned one, you could play the 1 6 2 5 progressions, you know. And then, yeah, when I fell in love with jazz, I just loved harmony. I never was a chop, chop, chop guy, but I loved the sound of those. We call them adult chords.
Uh-huh.
And
Right.
so, yeah, all of a sudden I'm playing in little clubs. And the first set in the club, we could play jazzy kind of tunes,
Uh-huh.
Misty, Autumn Leaves, those things. And
Uh-huh.
then the rest of the evening, we would play music, pop music for the people to dance.
Right.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Among the highlights of that time, you played with Steely Dan, and in 676, you of course played the famous solo on Kid Charlemagne, which Rolling Stone described as one of the best solos ever. I'd like to ask you a very specific question. At around 3 minutes, towards the end of your first solo, you add a sustained at the end of it, which for me is extremely unusual because it changes the whole pace of the song. Do you recall the moment that you added that?
Sustain.
Well, it's kind of you just slow it up. You play a
Yeah.
solo and then you kind of slow it up and everything changes.
You'd have to play that specific
Yeah.
part for me
Right.
to react to it, you
Okay.
know.
You okay, well, you once joked that you stole the first two chords of Steely Dan's Peg and used it
Yes.
as inspiration for your Room 335. Would you agree that all music is a little bit stolen?
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
Sure. Um, some wonderful chord things I've learned and some motifs I've learned as a kid, I still remember to this day, and they were from someone else. When I joined the group Foreplay,
yes.
um, we were playing one of our first gigs, and when it came time for my solo, I played a motif,
Mm.
and Harvey Mason was playing drums, obviously, and he said, "Yeah, that was a Joe Pass motif that I learned as a kid.
Uh-huh.
Always remembered it."
Wow, that's a great
Hmm.
story. You were playing with, of course, Abraham Laborio and Jeff Porcaro, and you said that there was they created a special energy together in those sessions. Is that what you remember most fondly about that time?
Yeah, we were very enthusiastic players at that time. We were still doing a lot of studio work, but we were working at the Baked Potato or Dante's, two different jazz clubs in North Hollywood. And we would get together just to play in these little small clubs. And there was an energy, like you said, of us just freely playing. We were just going for it and growing
Mm,
also.
mm,
I know, in my youth, I played clubs all the time.
mm,
And then when I got in the studio, I wasn't playing live at all, except with the Crusaders. And I think we only did 30 or 40 concerts a year. So it was fun at that time. We were all in the same headspace of let's go play and not have to be in the studio. So yeah, it was a great time because all of us just wanted to go play.
And keeping in a similar vein, when you played on Joni Mitchell's albums, for example, Spark and Court, in one interview you said, but you didn't work very hard on her records because it was all just very natural. That must be a great feeling to be in that mental space.
Yeah, of course it was. We were, man, I think during 1974, starting in that, we were all very, very high up on our game as studio players and musicians. So every session we went to was just us being able to do that because we were functioning. And I know the New York studio players were at the same level. Everybody was just at such a high level that the music was not difficult to make. And also, we were blessed. When I say we, Tom Scott, John Guerin, Max Bennett, Joe Sample, and myself on the Court and Spark album, they wanted us, the producers and the artists of those times, including Joni, wanted us to be ourselves. No preconceived ideas. They knew if they got Joe Sample, they were going to get Joe and his sound. Same with my guitar. So it was a cool time.
I bet. I know Joni's been playing again recently. Are you still in touch with her?
No, we haven't been in a lot of years. Yeah.
It's nice to see her back, though, isn't it?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And she just got a Kennedy's on her, I think.
Right.
And I just read about that. That's so cool because she deserves it.
Yeah. You must be the only musician who's both played with John Lennon and also turned him down.
I don't know about that, but yes, I did. You heard that story.
Yeah. Is that about whether you feel that the magic is there or not?
Um, I was just confident enough to know that it wasn't that album that for
Mm,
John Lennon and Phil Spector.
mm,
I just knew it was something I didn't want to be involved in because it was a
mm,
bad time for John Lennon.
mm.
He sat right next to me playing his acoustic guitar and he was drunk.
Yeah,
And that's not the kind of way I want to make music.
yeah,
So I'm sure you heard the story that Leon Russell was on that session that night
yeah,
also.
yeah.
And I drove Leon back to his hotel, the Sunset Marquis. And I said something to the effect of, man, that was a drag. And Leon, with his Oklahoma accent, he said, "You kidding? I'm back to Tulsa in the morning." And he quit too.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't fun to be playing with somebody who was out of it.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I read that story, it contrasted to me with the fun and the magic that I
Mhm.
think you have, the complicity with Robin Ford. That's completely the opposite in some ways.
Exactly. Yeah. I've been a huge fan and still am of Robin since I first heard him play.
Mm,
Uh, just a special gift that touched me
mm,
when I hear Robin play.
mm,
So we became friends.
mm,
I listened a lot to him those first couple of years that we knew each other. And it definitely influenced me. I've told this story, but I can say that listening to Robin at that time,
Mm,
I feel it made me a better guitar player, just having his influence come into my head.
mm. Thank you for that. You mentioned it a bit earlier, but I'll just go back to it. When you decided that you'd, in a way, had enough of becoming a session musician, I think you became a bit tired of it. Um,
Mhm.
at one point, you said you wanted to play, you preferred to play jazz in a smoky nightclub.
As a teenager, that was my dream.
Yes,
That's all my idols, Joe Pass, Wes Montgomery. Um, that's what I thought my life would be,
yes,
is playing jazz in clubs.
yeah,
But other opportunities came up and the path got changed,
yeah,
and I'm glad it did. It was great to play with some of the world's greatest musicians every day in
yeah,
the studio.
yeah,
Made me a better musician for sure.
yeah. And I understand in one of those live sessions, maybe at Dante's, you might correct me there,
Mhm.
an executive came up to you and asked if you'd like to make some solo records or a solo record. Is that right?
It is right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was Bruce Botnick, A&R engineer for
yeah,
CBS Records, and he said, "Have you ever thought about making a solo album?" And at that time, I was not thinking about that at all. But he said, "Well, why don't I get you some demo money and go in and cut 3 or 4 things and let's see what comes out."
uh-huh,
So I was very fortunate to go in with a few friends, Jeff Picaro, Abe Laboriel, David Foster, Greg Matheson, and I cut Room 335, Nightcrawler. I forget some jam tune I had written as a fusion tune. And CBS, when I turned it in, they wanted to sign me, but they wanted their Bruce Botnick, who I knew, he was an engineer in LA also. They wanted him to produce me. And I said, no, let me do the first one. Let me produce myself on the first album. And
mm,
if it doesn't work out, then I'll be open to talking about that. But they said, no, we don't want you to go in with by yourself. So I passed on CBS, but I sent the same tape to Tommy LaPuma at Warner Brothers. And I knew Tommy from the Crusader days on Blue Thumb Records. And they signed me and let me produce all my albums. Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And then I'm sorry to sort of skip over this, but
That's okay.
we haven't got a lot of time. Of course, you've released over 30 albums, solo albums. May I ask, is there one that you're particularly proud of, or that holds a special place in your heart?
I think the first Warner Brothers album
Yes,
with Room 335, Rio Samba, Nightcrawler, that album, it was my first time to have complete control and write all the tunes and go in and engineer it
yes,
and then play my heart out the way I wanted to play. And yeah, nothing but fond memories about that. And then one that was unique was after I did the 4 albums for Warner Brothers, they discontinued their jazz part of the label. So I wasn't looking for a record deal, but I got called by MCA Master Series. And their concept was to let musicians do anything they want to do for their label. And I said, well, I don't know what I would do. And one of the heads of it, Jimmy Bowen, who I had done hundreds of sessions for, he said, well, you've never played acoustic guitar. Why don't you do? I said, yeah, I'll do that. And that album's real special to me because when I was writing the tunes, I mean, Smiles and Smiles to Go came out and the world agreed.
yes,
Yeah.
of course. Well, it agreed more than that, because you've won 4 Grammys, you've had 19 Grammy nominations, and you've played on over 100 gold records. It's incredible. Can I ask what that recognition means to you?
Wow. It humbles me. It really does.
Yes,
Well, as I reflect back, and even at the time when it was happening, it's like, wow, they really do like the way I play. People
yes.
like the way I play. And yeah, all I can say is I never dreamed of those kind of accolades as a kid or anything. So I'm humbled, honestly.
Lovely, thank you. You're turning now towards the guitar. You're heavily associated, of course, with the Gibson ES335, and you said, "I was lucky I chose it, and it became associated with me." Can you share with us how and where you first came across it, and how it became your sound?
Yeah, sometime in my late teens, maybe it was early teens, I was playing at a club Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday afternoon with older musicians. I was 15. I remember we spent my 15th birthday at the club. So it was a supper club, so they served food.
Uh-huh.
But a guy came in one night on the weekend, and he was a big, tall guy, good looking, tall guy. And he had a red 335, and he played Moonlight in Vermont, jazz chords. And I'm 15 years old seeing this guy do this. And so I never forgot the 335, even though at the time I was playing an ES 175 like Joe Pass. So when the session scene started to happen, I knew I wanted a guitar that could be versatile, that I could still play jazz on, but also play contemporary pop music. And so I remembered that 335, and I went to a music store in Palos Verdes, California. They had three 335s on the wall, and out of the three, my 69 is the one I chose.
Lovely. Now you're collaborating with Sire USA Guitars. Can I ask you how that came about?
Yes. Well, as you know, for 5 or 6 years, Gibson put a Larry Carlton Mr. 335 sticker on some 335s that they made to my specs. And they never really got behind it, but they were proud to have me as an endorsee. And the quality control wasn't consistent like I had hoped it would be. So when my deal with Gibson was finished, I was approached by Sire, and their whole thing was, we would like to get involved with you. We've been involved with Marcus Miller on the bass for over 5 years now, and he's very happy with our quality. They said, can we fly to Nashville, meet with you, and show you an array of instruments that we think you would respond to because of the quality and the price point. And they brought these guitars out, and every one I picked up was just wonderful. And at the time, $600 for the guitar.
Yes.
I thought, now this is cool, because at this stage of my life, as much as I can give back, I'd like to. So
Yes.
the young players out there, the guys playing clubs, I'd love for them to have a good quality instrument for $600-700, you know.
Yes.
So Sire has been consistent. It's been going on 3 years now. And the instruments, I mean, they're taking off. The reviews are just amazing. So I'm just proud to be associated with a company that wants to keep the price point appropriate, but give the highest quality possible. And that's what we've been doing.
Can your fans, though, really get the tone that you deliver with these guitars?
Well, with any guitar, it's in the hands. The sound of me, the sound of Pat Metheny, he's going to sound like Pat Metheny no matter what guitar he picks up.
Uh-huh.
But I know, reflecting back in my early years, I bought an ES 175 because I saw Joe Pass on an album cover with it. So the guitars can inspire you to try to get into the world of one of your heroes. That's my approach. But to have a guitar that's quality and do that, I think is a really cool thing. But yeah, having a Larry Carlton model guitar could inspire somebody more than if they just bought something else.
You've also been a music educator, teaching at places like USC and the Musicians Institute, and especially in the 2010s, I believe you were doing masterclasses in Europe and North
Yep.
America. Do you still enjoy that?
I do. And I call them a clinic. I go in with nothing prepared. And if there's 100 guys in the room, or if there's 40 guys in the room, I usually start by saying, hey guys, this is our day. We may never meet again. So today's the day for you to ask Larry Carlton anything you've ever thought, man, if I ever met him, I'd like to ask him this. So it becomes very specific to the audience, each clinic. And yeah, we get some great questions, and some of them, I did a cute one at GIT a long time ago. Played and played, took some questions, and then somebody from the back of the room, it was all guitar players. He said, "What kind of pick do you use?" And I took my pick and I threw it in the audience and I said, "It doesn't matter. The pick isn't the pick." It was cute. It was
Yes.
cute though.
Ah,
Doesn't matter what kind of pick you use. Find
ah,
one you like, you know.
ah, that's lovely. Looking back at your career, how do you feel about the fame aspect of your work? The newspapers, the fans?
Again, humbled, and I've shared this a number of times. I always just wanted to be a guitar player. In my teens, I never wanted to be a star. That was
Mm.
never part of my go for it. It was always about the music. And so whatever notoriety I have now, it's just great because it wasn't planned.
Mm.
And I've said it earlier, but I'm really thankful that people want to hear me play the guitar.
Do you have any funny fan experience or audience
Hmm.
experience that you can remember, talk about?
I do. I'm I'm sorry I can't remember the gentleman's name because he's a big fan of mine and he contacted my manager. This was maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little more. And he said, "Larry's my favorite guitar player. And I have a Gibson 1958 335 that's been under my grandmother's bed for years. It's like new. And I would like to gift it to Larry as a backup guitar if he likes it." Now, and it was a it is a wonderful instrument. And to have that kind of love shown to me, you know, that somebody would like to give me that so that I might play it once in a while. And I have played it some, but that was a big gift from a fan.
Yeah, it's very touching.
Yeah.
You've achieved so much in music. Are there any people left you'd especially like to collaborate with, or any new exciting projects in the pipeline?
Really, there's no new projects. We're calling my tour for this year my farewell tour. Uh, it doesn't mean I won't go out and do some things, but we're letting the audience around the world and the promoters around the world that I'm going to be cutting way back. As I'm sure you know, I was 75 this year and I'm healthy. Life is good.
Yes.
And I can't see myself doing 120 concerts around the world any longer because I've done it. I've been there, but I still love to play. So
Yes.
I'll do 25 or 30 shows around the world, pick them, you know, hand pick them. Going back to Japan in June of this year and do 2 weeks there. So yeah, just cutting way back, but we wanted to let everybody know if you want to see him, he's not going to be out there as much as he used to.
Okay. I understand that you used to love fishing. Is that still a big part of your life?
Yeah, my home is on the lake,
Yes.
and we can walk out my back door, and in 30 seconds, you're down at the water. So we love the atmosphere here. And I'm happy to say that my 100-year-old mother lives with me, and she's doing just fine.
Mhm.
So yeah, we live out here on the lake and do quite a bit of fishing.
I understand that you became a Christian in the mid 1980s.
Mhm.
I was wondering what place that has in your life now.
Um, Still an important part. Spirituality part is still very important to me. Um, but I'm not a regular church goer by any means. It's more of a personal relationship, if you will.
Yes.
But there's a peacefulness when any of us find something we can connect to like that, I think.
Yes.
And I'm a very peaceful guy, Paul. Yeah.
Yes. One can tell. um, People are going to listen to your music forevermore, and each will have their own feelings about it. You clearly have many more productive years ahead, but I'd like to ask you how you'd like to be remembered.
Well, a couple of things come to mind. Like to be remembered as a really nice guy and a very, very tasty musician. Yeah, who wouldn't want that?
You've got it. Larry Carlton, heartfelt thanks for your time. It's been a real pleasure.
Great, man. Thank you for doing this. Appreciate it.